Gary, as convener of the prize, each year I have to read all of the books, or certainly make myself very familiar with them, and I always read all of the fiction books. There were 29 entered this year, and I have to say I began to be quite depressed as the weeks went on, as I turned from one book to the next, and maybe I was reading them in a particular order, and maybe I'd started off with the depressing ones, but I want to tell you that after a few weeks I was shocked by several things. One, mostly by the violence that's coming out in writing, that's preoccupying our writers at the moment, and particularly violence against women. Women are not coming out well in South African fiction at the moment, and particularly things like mother figures. There seems to be no safe haven for South Africa at the moment coming through in our fiction.
But that's kind of our national obsession at the moment, crime and violence. And I think there are two reasons for that. The old nationalist parties just completely suppressed that. There was no trouble in South Africa. Everything was under control. It was all dealt with secretly. And to a certain extent, the same has been true of the ANC government. They have been trying to project a sense of, we are a changed nation, we are dealing with this. But now the writers have got the freedom to write about the reality that is reflected in the newspapers and the television broadcasts all the time. And I think that is quite an interesting thing. I don't find a lot of the violence here to be exploitative. This is not Tarantino kind of violence that you're talking about here.
You're right.
It's really saying, will you look at how we are really living in this country? Yeah. It's all very well to project this wonderful vision of the opportunities for women in South Africa, when we have got the incidents of battery and of rape and of casual abuse that is not really taken seriously, even by the people who are supposed to be tending to them. I was listening to an interview the other day with a woman who had been raped, and she went into a centre to report the crime, and she was told by the healthcare worker that in her day they never wore those short skirts, and they were never that kind of rape. So that's I think that's the kind of thing that these books are bringing out. I mean, they're now confronting us with issues that we have not paid attention to before. It's not easy reading, but I think it's pretty impressive.
It is impressive, and the quality of the books being entered has improved. When I look back, the 6 years that the Fiction Prize has been going, when I look back to those early lists, it's astounding how much we've improved. And this year there are far fewer complaints of editing, complaints of cover design, which have been hammered in the past for how dreary our covers are. So all of that is improving. But as I say, I'm just fascinated by the preoccupations of our writers and women who neglect. I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, but I think if you take the stand that literature is a reflex of society, then I think we're an abandoned nation, because of the mothers that are coming through in, I'd say, 20 of those 29 books as a symbol are neglectful, are drunk, are abused, are all of those things. And maybe I am reading too much into it, but I found it fascinating.
Yes, but we are looking at family breakdown in this country. It is a nation in which the definition of what a family is has radically changed, and there is a great alienation between the youth who grew up in a new South African dispensation and the parents who grew up in the old, with an old set of values. It's only 13 years old, this democracy, and that generation gap is there as well. And I think perhaps the sort of young girls who have grown up watching Oprah and Tyra Banks and all of these people on television making that affirmative statement, you can do this, you are okay, you have a right to protest, you have a right to your sexuality, you have a right to defend yourself. Those stories never came out before. Did you read books like that before?
No.
They were certainly not there, that kind of feminist thing. Again, the censorship kept that out to a very large extent, and it was very politicized. So I think that's it is a bit overwhelming, I must say. This relentless sort of Dostoevskian gloom about the corruption of families. Surely things in South Africa are not that bad.